Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Great to be here.
So last week, I was totally sure, absolutely convinced we'd be talking 80s synth pop, had the Frankie Goes to Hollywood records ready and everything. Clearly, way off.
Well, my money was on competitive cheese rolling.
Yeah.
Down in Gloucestershire. Turns out, yeah, our crystal balls were maybe a little foggy.
Foggy. That's putting it mildly. Well, it looks like all our predictions were wrong. Today, we're diving deep into your shared sources for, well, what seems like a routine update on Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, and the interesting thing right off the bat is the UK. They've actually become the first country to, strike a deal.
Okay, let's unpack this based on what you sent over. Trump's reciprocal tariff strategy that kicked in April 2nd, 10% baseline pretty much across the board, but higher for some, like China.
That's right. And there was that sort of carrot. A 90-day suspension for most countries, not China, though, to try and get folks negotiating.
And it looks like the UK bit on that carrot fast. A preliminary agreement announced on May 8th. I'm picturing Trump and the UK PM Keir Starmer, big handshake moment.
Actually, there's a video conference. But the outcome, based on the sources, is these specific tariff tweaks. The U.S. is keeping that 10% baseline on most UK stuff.
Right, the baseline. But there were some key areas where they moved, weren't there? Cars, steel.
Exactly. The U.S. tariff on UK cars, it drops from like 27.5% down to 10%. Big drop. Though there's a cap, 100,000 vehicles.
Okay.
And that 25% U.S. tariff on UK steel, it's gone. Just eliminated. That's a pretty significant win, highlighted in the reports you shared.
Huge win for UK steel, I'd imagine. So what did the UK give in return, according to the sources? Can't just be good manners.
No. They're dropping their 19% tariff on U.S. ethanol imports. Plus, the U.S. gets a 13,000-ton duty-free quota for UK beef.
Ah, beef. Okay.
So, yeah, some agricultural wins for the U.S. side, too. The sources definitely point that out.
And it sounds like market access was a big piece of this, trading beef for whiskey, that kind of thing.
Pretty much. They agreed to expand agricultural market access. So U.S. beef gets easier access to the UK, and hopefully more UK whiskey flows this way.
Right.
There's also this pretty big commitment from the UK, buying $10 billion worth of Boeing aircraft.
Yeah.
That seems directly tied to getting those car tariff cuts. It's that kind of give and take the materials highlight.
Interesting. A definite quid pro quo. What about the, the modern stuff? Tech, finance.
Well, they mentioned cooperation there, but, and this is important, the UK's 2% digital services tax, that stays. Yeah, your sources indicate that might have been a sticking point, but it didn't stop the preliminary deal.
So this is all still preliminary, not like finalized.
Correct. Finalization is supposed to happen in the next few weeks, and the U.S. Ag Secretary, Brooke Rollins, is actually heading to the UK to iron out the details on that beef quota. That's in the updates you sent over.
Okay, so stepping back, what's the bigger picture? Why is this UK deal significant in Trump's whole trade strategy, based on what we're seeing?
Well, what's fascinating is how it fits into Trump's goal of, reshaping trade with these reciprocal tariffs. The UK, their trade with the U.S. is relatively balanced, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like they use that. They avoided hitting back with tariffs of their own and managed to get these concessions. It kind of highlights how this strategy might actually, maybe inadvertently, favor countries with less lopsided trade.
Interesting point. So it creates maybe a divide between trading partners.
Could do. And your sources suggest this UK deal might become a sort of template for other countries negotiating now, like India or Vietnam, perhaps.
Okay, so the UK played it smart. What about the other major player in all this tariff drama, China? How are things looking there, according to the updates?
Not great. The latest talks, U.S.-China, they were in Switzerland just recently, May 6th to 8th. Zero progress, apparently.
Yeah.
The U.S. is sticking with that huge 145% tariff on Chinese goods.
Wow, 145%.
Yeah, that's up from 125% just in April. And it includes that extra 20% IEEPA tariff.
The International Emergency Economic Powers Act, right?
That's the one. Gives the president pretty broad powers in emergencies, and Trump's using it for trade here.
Ouch. And China's hitting back, I assume?
Oh, yeah. They've got an 84% retaliatory tariff on U.S. goods. And you can start to see the economic bite in China. The sources show exports dropped 10% in Q1 this year.
10%, okay.
We're also seeing a slowdown in their Belt and Road investments. Even less aid going to places like Pakistan and Palestine.
So they're feeling it economically. What about diplomatically? How are they responding based on the news you sent?
Well, if you connect the dots, China seems to be trying to stir up anti-U.S. feelings where they can. Like at that recent OIC meeting, May 7th, they were pushing for Islamic solidarity, supporting Palestine and Pakistan. Probably a way to counter their isolation in these trade fights.
Interesting tactic. So while the UK cuts deals, China's trying to rally support elsewhere. Are they looking for other trade partners too, according to your info?
Absolutely. They're definitely looking for alternatives, engaging more with ASEAN, Malaysia specifically, and they just reopened talks with the EU about electric vehicles on May 8th. So yeah, they're clearly trying to diversify. Your sources make that point.
Okay, let's shift gears. Another key area in your materials, Taiwan. President Lai Ching-te, he's designated China an overseas hostile force. That sounds pretty intense. What's the story there, according to your sources?
Yeah, it's a significant move, and it's rooted in Taiwan's own anti-infiltration law. Lai's decision, from Taiwan's perspective, seems to be a response to a few things the sources highlight. First, China hasn't ever renounced using force against Taiwan.
Right.
Second, Taiwan reports seeing more intense Chinese tactics, both soft and hard, including what they call significant United Front infiltration efforts.
United Front, trying to build influence inside Taiwan?
Basically, yeah. Using various means, sometimes subtle, sometimes not, to push Beijing's agenda within Taiwanese society.
So it's not just about military stuff, it's political, social influence, too, based on Taiwan's reporting.
Exactly. And the anti-infiltration law itself defines these overseas hostile forces as countries or groups at war or in confrontation with Taiwan, or, crucially, entities using non-peaceful means to harm Taiwan's sovereignty.
Okay.
And Taiwan's been seeing more prosecutions, more convictions related to infiltration, particularly involving military folks, active and retired. That's detailed in your sources.
Wow. Yeah, that is concerning. You mentioned legal action against specific groups in the materials?
Yeah, groups like the China Unification Promotion Party and others allegedly involving retired military personnel who, might cooperate if there was an invasion attempt.
Yeah.
They've faced legal action.
So the point of this hostile force label is what exactly? To send a signal from Taiwan's view?
It seems to be a few things, according to the sources, mainly to alert the Taiwanese public to the threat they perceive. And to allow their national system, their security apparatus, to adapt. The end game is national security, social stability, and, the long-term well-being of Taiwan.
And Lai is saying this isn't just on him, right? He's calling for others to step up.
Exactly. He's called for unity across political parties, saying safeguarding the nation is everyone's job, urging the opposition to cooperate, even with all the political fighting. That's reported in your materials.
Okay. Now, we're also seeing Lai Ching-te's approval ratings move around a bit. Looks like they've dipped recently, according to the polls you shared.
Yeah, and what's insightful here is how different factors are coming together. That latest poll, Beautiful Island Electronic News, April 28th, it showed the first death cross. Dissatisfaction actually edged out satisfaction.
That was false. Okay.
Yeah, 47.1% satisfaction, that was down 8.5 points. And 47.3% dissatisfaction, that was up. Trust levels also slipped.
That's a noticeable shift. What's driving that? Based on the analysis in your sources?
Well, it looks like a mix of things. Domestically, you've got these recall campaigns from the opposition, the KMT and TPP, that whole anti-green communist combat dictatorship thing. It really ramped up. Then there are controversies over policies like the National Security 17 articles, the resumption of military trials.
Yeah.
Some see that as raising tensions with China.
And I bet the economy isn't helping, especially with these Trump tariffs looming over everything.
Exactly. Taiwan's economy is feeling it. That 10% baseline tariff, which is actually 32% for Taiwan.
32%. Wow.
Yeah. So Q1 export projections for 2025, down maybe 5%. That hits small businesses, the electronic sector, hard.
Right.
And it adds to inflation. All things your sources point to as drags on approval.
And how are the cross-strait relations playing into this? Lai's own comments.
Well, Lai's statements, like saying the PRC isn't Taiwan's ancestral land or the hostile force designation, while some Taiwanese support that, it definitely hasn't helped tensions with Beijing.
Right.
And then you have the increased Chinese military actions, those PLA planes buzzing around. It naturally fuels worries about security and the economy among people in Taiwan.
So it really sounds like a convergence. Domestic politics, cross-strait stuff, economic pressures, all hitting his numbers.
That seems like a fair summary. There was a bounce back in trust ratings in March, maybe tied to that resist China, protect Taiwan feeling. But the recall campaigns and the tariff impact seem to have reversed that in April.
Anything super recent, like the last few days in your updates? May 7th to 9th.
No new poll numbers in what you shared for those specific dates. But there was an ex-post mentioning Lai meeting with the heads of the 5 yuan, that's their branches of government, trying to smooth things over legislatively, maybe ease that recall pressure. And he met with business leaders, too, promising help for SMEs dealing with the tariffs.
Okay. Now, we also touched on China ramping up negative propaganda against the lie. What's their aim there, according to your information?
China's goals seem pretty clear, based on the sources. Discredit lie, undermine his legitimacy at home and abroad, sow division inside Taiwan, and push their whole anti-independence, promote unification narrative. They're using a bunch of different tactics.
What kind of tactics are we talking about based on what you've seen?
Well, recent examples. Back in March, there was this English video, a smear campaign, claiming Lai was bringing in martial law. It echoed the KMT's talking points.
Okay.
They also jumped on that Quad Guizi incident, an interview with someone described as a Chinese spouse, used it to hype up Taiwan's white terror, again, mirroring KMT attacks. And they consistently link Lai's comments to military threats, saying he's provoking peace, often right when they're flying jets near Taiwan.
So it's coordinated media, military actions. Is this new, or is there a pattern in your sources?
Oh, there's definitely a pattern. Late 2024, Chinese state media was bringing up Lai's pro-independence nature around the Biden-Xi meeting. They slammed his National Day speech as stubbornly pro-independence.
Right.
Their playbook seems to involve biased state media reports, exaggerating negative stuff, using social media, maybe fake accounts, local collaborators, working with pro-China groups in Taiwan, and using military intimidation to amplify fear.
And is this propaganda working? What's the impact, according to the analysis you read?
Inside Taiwan, it does seem to widen that blue-green political split. The KMT and TPP use these narratives for their recall efforts, which likely contributes to Lai's lower approval. But there's also a backlash. Some Taiwanese seem to rally around Lai because of the Chinese pressure.
Interesting. A counter effect.
Yeah, and internationally. The sources suggest China's smears don't have much traction, mostly because the world sees Taiwan as a democracy.
And you mentioned possible links between this propaganda and the tariff situation.
Absolutely. Chinese state media has recently been criticizing Lai's handling of the Trump tariffs, painting it like he's incompetent, making Taiwan's economy worse.
Ah, okay.
There's definitely potential for China to use the deadlock in the U.S.-China tariff talks to pile on Lai, especially hitting his perceived anti-China stance.
Okay, finally, let's loop back to those Trump tariffs specifically. How are they hitting Taiwan's economy and, Lai's approval based on the economic data in your sources?
The economic impact looks pretty real. That 10% baseline tariff, which, again, is 32% for Taiwan, it's definitely adding export pressure. That projected 5% export dip in Q1 is a worry, especially for small-medium businesses and the electronics sector.
Which is huge for them.
Huge. And this feeds into inflation, which hits people directly. Lai's promised help, business transformation, new markets, but the effects aren't visible yet. And the polls suggest the economy is a big factor in that rising dissatisfaction.
So quick summary from your sources. UK gets a tariff deal with the US. China's stuck in the tariff fight trying to build alliances. And Taiwan's President Lai is facing heat from multiple directions, labeled a hostile force by Beijing, dealing with domestic politics and taking an economic hit from those same US tariffs.
And it's really important for you listening to see how interconnected all this is. As the sources show, US trade moves ripple out. They affect global relationships, domestic politics, approval ratings, everything.
Absolutely. And, wading through all this complex info isn't simple, so thanks for breaking it down based on these reports.
And it leaves you with something to think about. What are the really long-term consequences of these trade shifts, these geopolitical tensions? Not just for stability globally, but for individual economies, maybe even industries you follow that were mentioned here.
Yeah, hopefully more countries can figure out agreements soon, stabilize things a bit. We'll definitely keep tracking it all.
Yeah, it's something we all need to keep an eye on for sure.
Don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive.
And hey, check out our old friend Micky's YouTube channel too. We're always plugging him.
This whole tariff negotiation thing, it reminds me, I tried haggling over this vintage record player once, thought I had all the leverage, seller just wasn't having it. Turns out, knowing your actual position is pretty key. Seems like the UK maybe understood that.
Huh. That's actually a great analogy. It really is all about the art of the deal, isn't it? Whether it's old stereos or, global trade.
All right, everyone. Thanks for diving deep with us into these sources today. We'll catch you next time.
See you then.